Let's move on to the news that's been breaking this afternoon, and this is Aubrey Kemi Badenoch's speech in Parliament about the Post Office and about this extraordinary interview given over the weekend. And I wonder what your take is on the way she delivered the very trenchant speech that she delivered, and this war of words, because that's effectively what it is, isn't it?
Absolutely, Kemi Badenoch's really come out fighting, and that's probably because she absolutely had to. There's some of the criticism and the accusations levied against her over the weekend by a former sort of very high-ranking official are really serious. And this was an issue that has high potency and cut through with the public as well. The government know just how damaging the story would be if it sort of continued to dominate the headlines and if there were questions left open after her statement. So she sought to sort of shut all of those down, refute any claims that the Post Office was asked to delay, suggesting that people received compensation for those who were affected by the Horizon IT scandal until after the next election, basically passing the buck and passing a bill on to whichever administration is next in number 10, which obviously, given the opinion polls, looks like it'll be Keir Starmer and co. But I suspect that people will say, there's no smoke without fire, and why would this man be motivated to make these accusations, even if they're disputed? So I suspect this won't be the last we hear of this matter, and it won't be the end of the questions for Kemi Badenoch or her department.
Well, I'm going to ask Richard what he thinks in a minute, but first of all, let's listen to a little of what the Business Secretary said this afternoon.
Several serious allegations were made against the government, my department and its officials by Henry Staunton, the former chair of the Post Office, over the weekend. These allegations are completely false. It is so disappointing that he's chosen to spread a series of falsehoods, provide made-up anecdotes to journalists and leak discussions held in confidence. All of this merely confirms in my mind that I made the correct decision in dismissing him. Mr Staunton claimed that when he was first appointed as chair of the Post Office, he was told by a senior civil servant to stall on paying compensation. There is no evidence whatsoever that this is true.
I mean, Richard, I don't suppose you can use any adjectives other than incredibly trenchant, enormously emphatic, and my God, the Business Secretary doesn't seem to flinch from impugning the good name of Mr Staunton, does she? She even says that one of his sins is to have been a bully.
I mean, the Business Secretary doesn't flinch from doing much, quite frankly, and for the moment that's working incredibly well for her. I don't think there's much that Kemi Badenoch does that we shouldn't interpret as the beginnings of a leadership campaign. It's a very much ongoing leadership campaign for her. If I was going to be, giving her a bit of friendly advice, which she probably doesn't want to take from me, but you never know, I would say that it's working now, but at some point, this incredibly aggressive, pugilistic attitude that she takes to everything might start to hurt her. I think that there's almost something a little bit Trumpian about the wildness with which she sometimes speaks on social media. And as long as she can keep control of that, she looks tough, she looks powerful, she looks articulate, she looks like somebody who's got the strength to lead a political party. But there is always a risk when you are, as she is, young and relatively inexperienced, that people see that as a sign of sort of lack of discipline. And that's something that some Conservative MPs, maybe less the Conservative grassroots, but some Conservative MPs might start to be a little bit uncertain if that's who they want running their party. But for the moment, she's running her leadership campaign extremely effectively, and she takes the risks and they turn out well for her.
Aubrey Allegretti, I mean, you might say that if you were Henry Staunton, you would take some kind of dramatic legal action, because the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, talks of a lack of evidence for various things that he alleges. But you wonder what kind of firm, bona fide, kosher evidence she has for the things that she alleges, and you might say that she has absolutely impugned this man's good name.
Quite well. I mean, the MPs who speak in Parliament are protected by parliamentary privilege, which effectively means that they can't really be sued for defamation or for dragging somebody else's name through the mud, rightly or wrongly. So it's quite unlikely that this would result in any sort of litigation. But you would imagine that the gentleman at the middle of this might feel that his name has been impugned very strongly. And I wonder if the business department has sort of done its calculations and wondered whether or not he has any evidence that he might want to produce, because it's a pretty sort of bold claim to say there's no evidence of it. So I imagine if this man sort of wants to protect his character, then he needs to come forward with that evidence.
I wonder whether this is something that might run and run. Richard, do you think it might? Do you think Staunton might fight back? I mean, you might think if he's got the gumption, and he had the gumption to give the interview to the Sunday Times, didn't have to give it, he gave it. He's obviously up for some kind of fisticuffs, isn't he? You might think, all right, business secretary, you can be as aggressive, belligerent, bellicose, pugilistic as you like, but this is my reputation. I'm 75 years old, I'm not having it. And you might think he might come marching back with some kind of counterattack.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, if he was a little bit younger, then and his reputation could have an enormous professional and financial impact on him, then I would say yes, definitely he's going to go for it. You know, if you're reaching retirement, you might decide that actually it's not worth going up against Kemi Badenoch in the ring. But one thing that I think is interesting, I hope I'm going to get this right, is that I think that Kemi Badenoch made the accusation of lying on social media before she made it in the House of Commons. Yeah. So Aubrey's totally right that everything that she said, all that detail that we just heard in the statement in the Commons is protected by parliamentary privilege. What she said on Twitter is not, and that's where she may fall down, because she's the one who needs to prove that he lied if it does go to court.
You see, I would take issue with your assessment of what one might do at a certain age and what one might not.
I apologise.
It's all right. No. You haven't said anything to apologise for. But what I'm saying is that you suggested that if you were a younger man with your career before you, you might well want to take action to clear your good name, and you might want to take the business secretary on. I'm saying that I would think that as somebody with 75 years of service behind you and your legacy, this is the postscript on your whole life. Do you want to go into retirement at the age of 75 with somebody calling you a bully, somebody calling you a liar, somebody saying you fabricated every single word that you gave in an interview to the Sunday Times? Or do you think, my God, I'm 75, do I want to be remembered as a lying bully for the rest of my days and by my successors and descendants in perpetuity? I do not. Maybe you think I've got no job to lose. I've already lost my job. In I go. I'm not having it. What do you reckon, Aubrey?
I suspect that if he has thrown caution to the wind once, then sometimes people like to sort of say their piece and then they don't like to get dragged down into the gutter, as they might see it. Sort of arguing over allegations and sort of bickering, engaging in a bit of a tit for tat, because then it risks sort of lowering yourself to somebody else's standard. So if that is...
I think we've got a trouble with your sound system. So, gentlemen, both, I thank you. Thank you very much for joining me on the programme.